Hello everybody. In this screencast we're going to look at how you can transition from one activity to another, right? And specifically we are going to use the concept of explicit intents. So intents are a mechanism to advertise what you want to do to the Android system, and then the Android system is going to figure out which activity to load based on the intent that you specify. Okay, so explicit intents are, as the name implies, explicit. You will ask to start a specific activity based on the class name, right? And that's very explicit. Okay, we'll look at implicit intents in a little bit, but explicit intents are straightforward. So basically, let's create another activity. So basically, this is the main activity, and if we look at the layout for it, let's just add a text to indicate that this is the main activity. So I have one activity, which is the main activity. I'll just drag a text field here and call it maybe the main activity. So I'll go here and maybe add text to you just to say this is the main activity. Okay, the text is gonna say main activity, right? And basically we want to go to another activity, so I'll add this at the button to say go to second activity or go to second activity, right? Add some margin, and similarly I'll just add some stuff here, some constraints so that I can center it, and then say go to second activity, right? So here it is, go to second activity. So when I click on this button and say, for example, it's called, the ID is button, it's fine. I want to go to the next activity. So let's create an activity first. So we go to the Java here in the package, right click and new, and scroll down a little bit to activity, and I'd like to create a empty activity. Here it is, right? So basically that's what I did. Right click, new activity, empty activity. Now I'll ask you what's the name of the activity. I'll call it the second activity. So basically I'll go here, I'll call it second activity. So basically, and I wanted to generate a layout for it, and it's called the layout will be activity underscore second. All right, and click on finish, and it did create the activity class for me, right? And it actually did create the activity layout. You see here, if you go to the layouts, you see it created the layout, and we have the main activity. Something else to look at also is the manifest. So we'll look at the manifest in a little bit, but if you now you have two activities, a main activity and a second activity. So basically, let's go to the second activity layout, just add something so that when it displays, you know that this is the second activity, right? So I'll copy exactly what we have in the main activity, because that's what I probably going to do, is just going to have some, let me copy the whole thing, Control A, Control C, and I'll go here, and in the code, I'll do Control A, Control V. I just pasted it, but the context here is going to be the second activity, right? And basically I don't need the button. Maybe we'll keep the button, we'll do something else with it, but here we go. And basically this button for the second activity, so this is the second activity, so we'll call it the second, right? It's going to call it second activity, and then here I'm going to say it's finish. I'll make the code that I want it to close, or close this activity, right? Close. Okay, here it is. So it's going to close the activity. All right, so we have these two activities when we want to go from one activity to the next. So let's say I want to go from when the user clicks the button, right? So find view by id r.id.button, right? So we have this button, set on click listener, new on click listener. So basically that's what we want to do, right? So basically for us to do this, we need to create an intent. Okay, so now it needs us to add the intent, and it's basically we need to import it. So one option is to hover over, and it's saying that alt enter. So basically control enter, or command enter control enter, option enter in on Mac, and control enter in Windows. So basically intent, we created the intent. You see it imported the intent. Here it is. It imported the intent, right? And I'll create a new intent, right? And if you look here, there are a lot of patterns. The one I'm going to look for is that it requires a context and a class. So basically the context is the activity itself, and you could see that this is an inner class. because this is a class that we are creating. It's an anonymous class that we're creating inside the main activity. All right, so the context is main activity dot this, right? And then the class that we want to go to is the second activity dot class, right? So that's what defines an explicit intent. You are saying that you want to go to the second activity specifically, right? And then you say start activity, and you pass it the intent. You just pass it the intent, and that's basically going to start the next activity, right? So now if we go to the second activity, right? And in that second activity, we want, whenever you click on the close button, to close the second activity. So we'll do the same thing. Find view ID r.id.button, right? Set on click listener, new on click listener, and all what I'm going to do is just say finish. Basically, finish is a method that you are asking the activity to close, all right, to close itself, right? So you run it. I ran it. Here it is. So the main activity runs. When I say go to the second, when I click on go to the second activity, it goes to the second activity, and then when I click on close, it closes. So basically, that is an example of an explicit intent. Explicit intent. Why is it explicit? Because you are explicitly specifying the class name here. Okay, and we're using start activity. Okay, so now when we go to the second activity, you could see that the first activity disappeared, but then the second activity appeared in front of it. When you click on close, the first activity comes back. Actually, it's not new. It was sitting behind it. The first activity was sitting behind it. Okay, so now it appears. Perfect. So that's the main idea around explicit intents. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.